Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome to our TLHE lecture tonight. I'm a bit fluey, so yeah, my throat and nose are just not doing too good. How's it going on your side? It's freezing cold here, bitterly, but at least it didn't rain too much today, and just very busy. And by you, how is it going? Is everybody well? All going good? I should always ask. Can you hear me? Great. And I'm hoping that the thumbs means that everything is going well. Is it recording? Yeah. But just off the TLHE topic, I posted a message in the CURS group about that package that I was speaking about that was designed for you to help you with assignment 1. So allocate some time over the weekend and work through it. And then on day, I will send out a link for a survey just to get some feedback from you about your experience with CURS so far, the module, that package, and pages that I created and whatever. So then you can just give me some feedback, and then that will help inform how we proceed for the remainder of the semester. Okay. So moving on to today, is there anything before I get started that you want to ask or anything that's not clear regarding TLHG? Of course, we'll finish like about 15 minutes early so we can have time to do some Q&A for part 1. So is there anything that you want me, any questions you have before we get started? Ice task 2. Okay, sure, go ahead. What's your question, Kavi? Do you want to unmute and ask? You can just unmute, as long as your background isn't screamingly loud.
No, all good. Evening. Sorry, you're gonna hear some rain.
Okay.
Just regarding iStar 2, is it a template or are we populating it?
No, it's only a template at this point.
No, because at the bottom it said one of your tasks must be computer aided.
Yeah, so you must make provision for a computer aided. Let me just open the ice task. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, the wording is
to
not
make sure I'm
ideal.
telling you the right thing. Sorry about that. Let me check. Oh, I'm opening a Word document.
So for all of it, it says create a template that's usable and addresses all of these questions.
Right.
And then at the bottom, it says one of your assessments must be computer aided. So that was just causing some confusion for me.
Okay, so in your template, and this is going to help you with your final parts of your POE, which is why it's structured like this, because then for your POE, then you will know exactly what to populate and where. So when you're creating your template, so you're going to have your 2 formative, your 1 summative, and whatever. So one of those you can pick and you can say computer aided. You don't have to actually design the task or populate details, but you can just indicate computer aided, for example. Make sense?
Do you mean like, okay, so formative must be indicated as computer aided, or?
Your diagnostic could be, the summative could be, whichever.
Okay, so then don't put an asterisk saying this must be computer aided.
Like that, yes.
Okay, I think I follow.
Okay, so just pick one that you think would be best suited to be computer aided, and include it in your template so that when the time comes for you to actually populate this template, then you have it in your mind already that one of the tasks have to be computer aided. Does that make sense? So from this point already, you're preparing now for when you have to populate it.
Sorry. Yeah. Okay. I think I'm following.
Okay. Well, give it a try and let's see what you do. And I'll always correct or give you feedback or let you know if it's not on the right track. Though I'm sure it will be fine.
Okay. Cool. So it just a template that can be populated.
Yes, at a later stage.
Got you.
Okay, cool. Okay, great. Any other questions? Anything else? Or can we move on? I don't see any hands. Okay, let's carry on. So I started off with a think about why is it important to prepare students for assessments? Just any ideas that you have, 2 minutes, because I don't want like any academic heavy, just like your thoughts. If you could please type up something in the chat box. Okay, 3 minutes. It's now 37 minutes past. So by 40 minutes past, if you could please put an idea about why you think it is important to prepare students for assessments. Okay, so some responses. Let's see. Preparing students for assessment helps them build confidence and absolutely. It also ensures they understand the content and can apply their knowledge effectively. Good. Set personal expectations, provide clarity on unclear instructions or wording. Yes, like what to do about the computer aided assessment, and provide guidance on your expectations in terms of how you'd like the responses constructed and presented. When students know what to expect, they are less anxious, very good, and then they understand the expectations. The students need to understand what is required of them and combine with feedback to see an improvement in future work. Yes. So students have a basic understanding of what is expected of them before tackling basically guidance to ensure students are equipped with the right knowledge and tools to reinforce their understanding. Good. So they understand what is expected from them. So I think quite a few responses here brought forward the expectations. And I certainly think you've hit on something there because I remember being a first year student coming straight out of high school, where you had a teacher in the classroom with you all the time, explaining everything to you. And then you a first year student, and you have a lecturer who stands at a podium and reads out notes for about an hour, and then somewhere in a folder you are given, there'll be 3 assignments that you must complete, and nobody actually explains what you have to do with these assignments. You just get given them, and then you've just got to complete them and submit them, and then they get marks. And oh my goodness, from a high school A student, you have failed your first assignment. It's completely devastating. And I don't know if anyone else had that experience, but it was simply a case of not knowing what to do with the assignments. The terminology, the jargon, and the expectations. Yeah, and then lose DP. Yes, of course. And then, guess what? You have to repeat the module. It was the most terrible, earth-shattering thing I think I've ever been through, and I'm sure many students will relate, including yourselves. Like, how did I do so badly? How did I not know what to do? It's written in English. But sometimes what the person who has set the assessment or the lecturer expects and what you understand might not be aligned. So your understanding might be missing as a student. And that's why it is important to take students through an assessment before they complete the assessment, to prepare them for the assessment. So like in the case of an assignment or POE, like we've been doing, I mean, that's a lot simpler. You can simply, as we do, prepare a recording that they can go through that will explain everything to them and then give them an opportunity to raise questions. But in like, excuse me, for tests and exams, there's other strategies that you can implement, and that's ultimately now where your understanding of your discipline, faculty, modules will come in. Okay. So learning unit 2 is the educational impact of assessment. And theme 1 is preparing students for assessment. And basically, learning unit 2 is directly linked to part 1 of your POE. So discuss the importance of preparing students for assessment and some very nice ideas, very pertinent ideas coming through from everybody here. Explain how feedback can be used to prepare students for assessment. How interesting that feedback is something that happens after the assessment, but can be used to prepare students for assessment. Identify practical methods to support student understanding of assignment requirements and criteria. And I honestly feel that that is where most students fall short, is because they don't understand what the assignment expects of them. And sometimes rubrics are so full of jargon and heavily worded that students don't understand them. Like if I think if I had to send you an example of what the rubrics for this module looked like when it first came about, you'd be completely baffled. Like one criteria is a page long. And it would go on about, I can't even remember, but like holistic, or all sorts of big complicated terminology that I had to sit with my phone to understand. No, I'm just kidding. But it was very, very complex. And for me, assignments, the wording, and the criteria must be as simple as possible. So that if for any reason a student is not there for the assessment prep or not able to attend assessment prep, like, for contact students, for example, then they can still somehow figure out what to do. Okay, but preparing students is very important. Preparing students builds confidence. Somebody did say that in the chat. You can turn it into a quiz or a game, make it fun, analyze the purpose of the task, look closely at the rubric and the instructions. That's very important. So very often, lecturers and even teachers spend a lot of time explaining the task. And then they say, okay, now you can go off and complete the assessment. But they don't actually explain the rubric. And the rubric, I think, is equally, if not more important, in helping you understand what the expectations of the task are. So you have to go through both. And then maybe get students to design their own test tasks. So, then we can swap with each other. So you give them parameters and say, okay, now you design your own test task, and that will help them to prepare also for the test. There's so many other ideas. So you will have to conduct some research here and see what strategies, methods, and ideas and approaches there are. Practical ideas, basically, for preparing students for assessment, and then see which ones will work best for your faculty and modules, and obviously why. So, well, the importance of preparing students for assessment. While students, this is in Highlands research, while students wanted to do better, they seldom knew how to improve because they did not understand the language in assignment briefs and lacked clear, precise, and practical advice. And there we go, helping students adjust to the demands of writing at university is pivotal. I don't know what the rest is there, but it's so important. And, I think nowadays, obviously, it's come to the fore that this needs to happen. But in our days, it did not happen. You had to fill in the blanks and just figure it out. So now we know better, and now we must prepare students for each and every single assessment before they do the assessment. And it's got to be in good time. I know this time I might be quite early, and for the second one also, but the second one, I did the QA sessions before you go on your break because I figured during the break, maybe people would want to work on their submissions. So that's why I pulled those QA sessions like so far in advance. But generally, your prep should happen continuously and then formally, like enough in advance to allow students time to prepare. So timing is also very important. Okay, so I think I talk enough now. What is involved for students in becoming academically literate? So what does it mean, and what are the implications? What does it take? What is involved in making students academically literate, or in students becoming, I don't suppose you can make them academically literate, but what is involved for students in becoming academically literate? So any ideas that you have on this? 5 minutes. So it's now 10 to at 5 to. Could you please post a response? These are all absolutely 100% correct. And the ideas that Sunette suggested about what is involved for getting students more academically literate are absolutely wonderful. I do think development of skills that allow them to complete tasks, reading and comprehension, writing, 21st century skills. Okay, that's what I was looking for. Thank you. So it is most definitely, as Kavi, Amy, and Diana have said about the comprehension, the reading, the accessing, the researching, the referencing. It's certainly all of that. But remember nowadays, well, recently, we have moved forward in the sense that we now have all these amazing AI tools that can do all of this already. So academic literacy and definitions thereof have shifted. And also now we have to focus on part of academic literacy is, as Bhavna has said, your 21st century skills as well. The critical thinking, collaboration, and creativity. So it's a culmination of all these skills. Academic literacy, when we were starting off higher education, was just reading and writing. Going to the library, taking out textbooks, sitting and reading, and then writing with a pen and a piece of paper. And then shift started happening with the internet. Then it was now researching, being able to source online sources, researching. The idea of research changed. Research before was going to a physical building and looking for information. So research and the way we conduct research has changed. And now with AI tools, it's changed again. So it's very important to align your thinking. Um, Kavi says there is a huge disconnect between FET and higher education. Well, that's an idea I'd like to explore further. So thank you for raising it. What does everybody think about the disconnect between FET and higher education? You can post your ideas in the chat. Does this disconnect exist? What does everybody think? And if so, what is this disconnect? And what are the implications of the disconnect? Okay, so I don't want to go for too long on this point. I see some ideas have come through. And one that Kavi says is about referencing. And then Peter speaks about the free education. And Sunette asked about academic or practical. And Diana speaks about thinking critically. And the expectations of the role of the teacher, most definitely. I think everything that you've said here is correct and then some. So there's definitely a disconnect um, between what students are expected to do at FET, and then they are not prepared. And that's where the concept of preparedness has come in. They are not adequately prepared to enter higher education. And what Peter's saying is correct. Generally, the more uh, expensive the school is, the more better prepared the students are to enter higher education, just to put it very bluntly. It's generally the poorer rural schools where teachers themselves don't really know the expectations of higher education, and they don't have the technology and so on. And then you come to tertiary education. And I remember when I first started at Varsity College, and this was many years ago, and this problem, I promise you, still exists. Students would come and they expected to submit their assessments through Turnitin, and they expected to type their assessments and work through an LMS and so on and so forth. And these students did not even know how to log into a device. They didn't even know how to put in a username and a password, let alone open a Word document or how to type on a Word document. I mean, a simple thing like comma space and then the next word, full stop space and then the next word, double line spacing, single line spacing, changing font types, colors. They know nothing about that. So imagine the bridge that has to be crossed in terms of that basic computer literacy skill. And then we come to the academic literacy. Then we come to the different ways in which they are taught, like Sunette said, the more academic versus the more practical. It's a lot. It is really, really a huge jump. And slowly, I think schools are becoming more aligned. But is it enough? So there is definitely a disconnect, and there is definitely an issue of preparedness, which is why preparing students for assessments, especially in their first year, is so important. Um, Once they start getting used to the assessment structure, then, it becomes a little bit easier for them to work through on their own. But initially, yes, they need a lot of scaffolding and support. Okay, so just taken as a whole, preparing students for assessment means assisting them to learn to write in the discourse of their discipline. That in itself is a skill. Through acquiring tacit knowledge of its form and conventions. So, different modules have a different discourse. So first, the students obviously need to understand that, and you would have noticed it even in your PGDHE qualification. Like the way you write, well, for APPE will be slightly different from how you present the information in your POEs for TLHE, for example. Okay? Explore assessment criteria within context, develop accurate perceptions of tasks, their rationale and purpose. And I think that's one of the most important things. If students can see the purpose of the task, why, if they understand why they are doing the task, then half the battle is won. Recognize the varying emphasis of different tutors and modules. Focus on an intention to gain meaning from completing their understanding, their assignments, recognize the specific requirements, formats, and purpose of unfamiliar assessment tasks. So, like in high school, not all students write academic essays, even though it's in the CAPS document, and they're supposed to start learning the structure of the academic essay. I think it's from I used to teach it in grade 7, if I'm not mistaken. Just a simple academic essay, yeah. They don't. They don't even learn referencing. Do you know that referencing is supposed to be taught from grade 4? It's in the CAP social science document. They're supposed to start learning referencing. They've got to do a little research project, and they've got to do in-text referencing and bibliography compilation. But when teachers themselves don't know what that is, what do? They just skip over it and move on to the next thing. It's like that life skills textbook that has the pictures of the boy and girl human body. Like if teachers are not comfortable with that, they'll say, okay, just turn over the page, let's move on now to the next thing. So it's the same with referencing. If they don't know how to do it, they're just going to skip it. And then so the learner goes higher and higher, and they come to higher education and they don't know the skill of referencing. And so they are behind their peers from schools who have been doing it from as young as grade 4. Okay, so let's move on to feedback. Time goes so fast. We've just got a few minutes left. But feedback after the assessment, we can never ever speak about feedback and not speak about Hattie and Timpoli. So please make sure you go and read and always include Hattie and Timpoli when you are speaking about referencing. So this is just a very useful source, the importance of providing meaningful student feedback. And we all know, as Hattie and Timpoli say, feedback is one of the most powerful tools in teaching and learning. But the structure of the feedback is so important. It has to be meaningful, it has to be useful, it has to be timeless. And Hattie and Timpoli give a whole lot of criteria, and here's some of it. So it must be educative in nature, it must be given in a timely manner, it must be sensitive to the individual needs of the student, and it must answer 4 questions. So when you are reading up on effective feedback, you will definitely encounter these. And then you must see how to obviously, goodness me, excuse me, apply it meaningfully to your discipline, to give students feedback. So for numeracy modules, obviously, those who do accounting and the IT modules, the nature of feedback will be different from, for example, humanities modules, where you have to give more detailed feedback, more lengthy, and whereas like for numeracy modules and that, I suppose it's more immediate, and providing correct and incorrect responses, and then feedback on why it's incorrect and feedback on why it is correct, something like that. Okay, so it will be different. At what stage in the learning cycle will feedback be more effective? Give feedback as soon as possible after the completion of a learning task. So the worst thing, and this used to happen so frequently back in our days in higher education, I'm sure people here can relate. You'd hand in that handwritten piece of work that you did in the library till the middle of the night because you were out having a good time over the weekend, and you submit it to the lecturer, and a month later you still haven't gotten it back. And then finally, before the exam, you get the piece of paper back and you've even forgotten what you wrote on it. So then how do you use that feedback? That feedback has no purpose. So the feedback must be given in time, with enough time for the student to use the feedback to improve on the next task. Sometimes temporarily withholding feedback is needed to allow the students to internalize and process the demands of the task. And that is Hattie and Timpoli that I was speaking about. And last year, just incidentally, a paper that I collaborated on with one of my colleagues was published in the Turkish Journal on feedback in online learning. So yeah, you can go check that out. And what was interesting, what we found was that what lecturers believed and perceived to be meaningful feedback and what actually constitutes meaningful feedback were very different. So very often lecturers think that they are giving meaningful, constructive feedback sincerely, and they endeavor to, and I'm sure this is the case for me as well. But what actually is required for meaningful, useful feedback is different. And the reason for that, I think, is very simple. It's time. When you're marking so many assessments, to go into that level of detail and unpack, and it's a whole I'm trying to remember, we designed the cover sheets to support lecturers, and I'd like to see what they're actually going to do with this cover sheet. But I think it's like 8 questions that have to be answered to complete the meaningful feedback cycle. So can you imagine now when you're marking 50 assignments that have 3 questions each, and you have to give feedback that has 8 questions for each student? Like, it's not very manageable. So yeah, I think for the most part, we do the best that we can, but there's the other side of the coin. You can give the most detailed, you can give the most amazing feedback, but if the student does not access and use that feedback, then there was no point. So there's 2 sides to the coin. Students need to know how to access and how to use that feedback. And that's where the feedback loop gets closed. So there has to be another step in the process. And ideally, what should happen, and I wish that maybe I can implement this in the next cycle, but to have like a little form that you give to the students after you give them the feedback. I mean, it could be a simple, now that I'm thinking about it, it's actually not that complex. So you could just throw out like a Microsoft form to the students to say, like, what did you think of your performance in the assessment? What feedback did you find most useful? And why? What did you find least useful and why? And how will you implement the feedback in your future assessments? And that will close the loop on the feedback cycle, because then you are making the students think critically and reflectively. I really like this. And then you can also see if the students have understood your feedback. And any other issues then could come out, be communicated with you through that survey. So that's a really nice idea. Maybe we must trial it after the first assignment for CUS. I hope I remember. Okay, but it's a strategy that you can also use. Okay. So we're exactly on time. Please continue as per the pacer with Learning Unit 2. You should be finishing it up. As mentioned before, even though the ISTARs don't count for marks, they're certainly going to help you unpack and understand the concepts. And if there's any understanding missing or any gaps anywhere, then I can pick them up and assist you. And they have been with referencing, quite surprisingly, considering it's semester 2. You need to start working on part 1. It's terribly uncomplicated, but get it started and get it out of the way so that you can focus more of your attention on the CUS 1. And I'm just very honest about it. The CUS 1 does require, it's more cognitively demanding than the TLHE one. So yeah, you want to try and finish this one off, and then even though this one is due after that one, get it done, and then you can focus, comfortably on CUS. Okay, and then please attend our next lecture. So part 1 of the POE, any questions? You can start shooting. I put the parts on a slide because sometimes when you have questions, then I go scrambling for the POE. So I just put it on here so that we have it in front of us. I think it's very straightforward, but obviously now I would think that, but I don't know if my expectations have been made clear. That's such a good point that was raised. So yeah, any questions? Anything that's not clear that you'd like me to explain or anything? I'm going to mute and you can put your ideas in the chat box. If you have no questions and everything is clear, and you'd prefer to go off and start working on the task for the remainder of the time, by all means, you can leave. If you want to stay and listen, if anyone else has questions, you can do that too. It's up to you. But yeah, okay. So any questions? So if there are two different disciplines, if you see here, oh goodness me, No, I can't see this thing. I thought I took clear screenshots. Hold on, let me just open the POE. Yeah, I had it open earlier on today. I should have taken clearer screenshots. That would have helped. I thought I had most groups aligned. So what you can do if you have more than one discipline and you want to present different ideas, then just within the block, maybe change the font color. That's what students have done in the past, where they have where they have different disciplines, then you can just change your font color and maybe just like in the top block where it says discipline, right? So let's say one person's discipline is education and one is business management. Maybe make education purple and business management blue. And then in obviously, so for things like where you're giving a clear overview, the need to integrate academic literacy, there you need to obviously give it in the different disciplines. So you can have like, a general idea and then drill down into your disciplines. The role of guidance and feedback in preparing students. So that's, just an explanation. And then I said I would remember that bit that I cut off, but now I don't. The process involved also that you're just presenting information. Then the next one, practical methods to support student understanding of assessment requirements in discipline. So there you're going to split it up. And justification of how the methods may support. There you're going to split it in your colors. Does that make sense, Sunette? So yeah, just use a key for each discipline and just put it in the different colors. And then, yeah, it will be fine. Sometimes ideas even overlap. So like for modules, like if you think about within the humanities, like you might have communication science, you might have English, and you might have psychology. Sometimes like ideas might overlap, but sometimes you might need something different. Then you can say that. You can say this idea will work for the following disciplines. However, this one would need a little bit more of that, and that one will need a bit less of that, and whatever the story is. Okay, great. Any other questions, guys? I don't see many coming through. Let's do something quickly. On a scale of 1 to 5, how comfortable do you feel with this task 1, which is for 20 marks and is to complete the table? So on a scale of 1 to 5, type a number in the chat box, please. 5 being very comfortable, 1 being very uncomfortable. So 5 is, yes, I'm ready, I can ahead and do this. And 1 is like, I don't know what I'm doing here. Can I see some numbers? And if you're typing a question, please keep typing your question. Oh, great, Diana. That's nice. Okay, so now it's a 3. I'm sure as you keep working through it, and then yeah, you'll definitely get there. So I think, Kavi, the only way to do this really is to meet, first of all, just to get those, the overview, the role of guidance, and then those practical suggestions as a group to get those done. And then in terms of the different disciplines, to meet with your group and to say, okay, look, this is what I've come up with for my discipline. What is different or the same in yours? What is different or the same in yours? And then slowly in speaking to each other, you will figure out how to synthesize and present that information. And for me, so far from what I've seen, and like there have been groups that have been, I mean, like sometimes 3 different disciplines. And I think the best way was the color coding. But sometimes students, like if you consider the nature of the disciplines and the overlaps, yes, English and communication can be a lot of overlap, but sometimes there can be differences, and that is what you will say. You will say, for English literature and communication, you will need to prepare students in terms of academic literacy, in terms of writing and reading academically. However, what will be different is critical thinking or collaboration or whatever the case might be. So it will all just depend on what works in the disciplines, what overlaps and what's different. If it's vastly different, then color code and just present two different ideas. But if you want to show that, there are the similarities and some strategies can work in both, and then, certain strategies can work in one but not in the other. I mean, that's wonderful also. It's showing a very high level of critical and analytical thinking. And that's what we need to see at this level. Like, what's different about your discipline? And that's where the collaboration comes in. And that's where the beauty of the collaboration comes in. Where you're coming together and you're learning more from each other about their views on your discipline or their views on their discipline, which is different from yours. Okay, so I'm glad to see that nobody is below a 3. I would have liked to see more 4s, but I suppose a 3 means I'm there, but I just need to do a little bit more, which is absolutely fine because you haven't completed Learning Unit 2 as yet. So by the time you complete Learning Unit 2 and you go through the recording again, and then you actually start putting pen to paper, so to speak, then I'm sure you're going to be in a much better space. But don't fall into the trap of saying, okay, right, Sunette, you're going to do the first block, Peter, you're going to do the second block, Kavi, you're going to do the third block. And so we'll go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and that's how we go. Don't fall into that trap because your response will be lacking. You have to come together and discuss, and then one person obviously will take the lead and compile the response, but it has to be after a group discussion so that everybody knows what's going in, and so that it's synthesized and it doesn't look like 4 different people, trying to come in. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Are there any other questions, or is everybody fine? Can I get a thumbs up if you're fine? Let me just come to the screen so I can see all the thumbs ups coming. Yeah. Okay, great. So I didn't really expect that there would be very many questions or uncertainties about this one. Because like I said, it's fairly simplistic. It just really, the difficult part of it is it does require analytical and critical thinking and application, and a very good understanding of the nuances of your discipline. And that's what I'm going to be looking for, not just a presentation of information. That we do in the ICE tasks. So thank you very much for joining. And yeah, it was a lovely session as always. And then I look forward to seeing you next week for CARS. And if in the interim anything is uncertain or uncomfortable, then please email me. And just a reminder that I am responding to my students' emails. So my out of office does not apply to you. Okay, so if you do need help with anything, then you just send me an email and I'll see how best to support you. So have a lovely evening, and I hope you find time this weekend to work through the CARS package that's there available for you to help you with assignment 1, and I hope you find it very useful. Okay, have a lovely evening, everybody. Good night. Bye-bye.